Good day, gentlemen. Dirk here with the MGTOW solution. This video is going to be about accepting reality, which for MGTOW guy means taking the red pill. I'll review that topic a bit, and I'm also going to get into a little discussion on Briffault's law. If you're not familiar with Dr. Briffault, this is definitely something you're going to want to pay attention to because it's highly relevant to the world of MGTOW. So let me go ahead and get into it. Enjoy. Chapter 3. Accepting Reality. If you've seen the film The Matrix, then you may recall the scene where Neo takes a red pill and can subsequently see reality as it is. Prior to this, his reality was a construct of the Matrix, a computer program designed to keep humans in a state of perpetual ignorance. He was also given the option of taking a blue pill, which would ensure he'd remain oblivious to the true nature of things. Of course, he opted for the red pill, and the rest is history. This red pill idea is common in the world of MGTOW, and it's an apt analogy. The premise is that we've been sold a bill of goods by society. We've been told that women are constantly oppressed by dubious men intent on keeping them down to preserve the patriarchy. That the world is inherently unfair to women. That sexism is rampant and that women are always the victims. That women are equal to men in all ways and are capable of everything that men are. That the world would be a better place if women were in charge. That men have all of the advantages while women must struggle in an unjust world. Accepting these ideas is known as blue pill thinking because if you buy into it, then you do not have a grasp of reality. Taking the red pill simply means that one rejects arguments and distorted facts that they know to be false. You could also call it a reality check or a paradigm shift. Whatever you call it, the idea is to see things as they actually are, as opposed to how we've been told we're supposed to see them. It's based upon verifiable facts, as opposed to propaganda and appeals to emotions. For example, we continue to hear complaints about the completely debunked 77% wage gap, wherein men earn more than women. A blue pill male might respond, "Wow, that's really wrong. I didn't know that was still a problem, but it obviously is. No wonder feminists are so upset. We really need to fix this. It's totally unfair." A red pill male, by contrast, wouldn't automatically accept this at face value. Instead, he might inquire, "How did they arrive at that number? Oh, they simply compared all women to all men, regardless of education, job responsibilities, and performance? That's not very scientific. Perhaps part of the disparity is due to career or education choices. Most engineers are men, while most social workers are women. Perhaps if more women went into computer science or some other relevant field instead of art history and gender studies, they'd make more money. Maybe taking maternity leave has something to do with it. A lot of women work part-time, and that's probably a factor. Men perform most of the dangerous jobs, and those tend to pay well. They should probably evaluate this based on performance in similar jobs, so we're comparing apples to apples. I'll bet 2 college professors with equal credentials but different genders earn the same. Or 2 retail clerks for that matter. Looks to me like that number is based upon some seriously flawed studies, or it's deliberate statistical manipulation. I don't buy it. When you look at reality objectively, it quickly becomes clear that things are not as they once appeared. The claim that the system is rigged against women doesn't hold up when you consider what happens in divorce court. The argument that women are more creative than men falls apart when you look at the history of composers, inventors, and architects. Think women are smarter than men? Take a look at the key figures in science. Since we don't literally have a red pill to swallow, how do we know when a man, or a woman for that matter, has taken it? Through their behavior. When you see a man jumping through hoops in a vain attempt to keep his nagging wife happy, that's blue pill behavior. When you see a man ignoring a woman seeking his attention, that's red pill behavior. I suspect that the gradual process of awakening that I experienced is the norm. In other cases, a single interaction with a woman may be all it takes to trigger a wake-up call. Either way, once you start to see clearly, it can be disheartening to recognize how bad things actually are. This realization often results in what is known as red pill rage. I also half-jokingly refer to it as post-traumatic stress disorder. Red pill rage is, hopefully, a temporary condition that commonly occurs during a divorce. It's a normal part of the process of coming to terms with reality. After all, it's difficult not to experience anger when a woman who claimed to have loved you is attacking you, taking possession of your children and resources, and actively attempting to ruin your life. The situation is even worse once you realize that the state is backing her up. It's a hard pill to swallow, but it often leads to the solution, which is MGTOW. Men tend to be problem solvers, and once they get past all the drama, the solution becomes clear and they can move on to a better life. At this point, the education process really begins. Most of the information about MGTOW is online, much of it on YouTube. There are content providers of all types, taking many different approaches, so it's easy to find something that you can relate to. You'll find everything from deep philosophical discussions to stand-up comedy. Whether you adopt the red pill analogy or simply consider yourself better informed, you'll begin to see things differently. This is apparent in the forums, where men share examples of how MGTOW philosophy has enabled them to cut through the clutter and see the world as it is. A good example is from a meme I saw on a MGTOW site. There are 3 frames from the film Forrest Gump. In frame 1, Forrest and Jenny are standing together while he's still a soldier. The caption reads, "Gets friend-zoned." In frame 2, Forrest is the wealthy owner of the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company. The caption reads, "Gets rich." In frame 3, Jenny returns with the caption, "Guess who comes back?" Most people would completely miss this, but some observant MGTOW was able to see what was going on in that film from what you could call a red pill perspective. This kind of situational awareness serves us well because it helps us to spot attempts to manipulate us or influence our perception. So when a pretty girl bats her eyes and flashes some cleavage because she needs help moving or something, we can see it for what it is and go fishing instead. This is important because women attempt to take advantage of men all the time, and most guys let them. But it can be very entertaining to see how women react when it doesn't work. They usually get a startled, deer-in-the-headlights look, but sometimes just confusion. Let's say you're at a little get-together, and some single woman starts discussing how stressed out she is because something is broken in her house. She's expecting some guy to step up and offer to fix it, at no charge and with no expectation of anything in return. A guy who falls for this is known as a white knight. When you simply state, "That sucks," and change the subject or walk off, she'll probably be dumbfounded. There are countless examples like this, all the result of women's behavior. They've insisted that they are at least as capable as men, yet when they get a flat tire, they just stand there and wait for a man's help. MGTOW drive on by. We have better things to do than bail out some chick who claims to be a strong, independent woman, but isn't. Or, to quote one of the forum posts, "If you rescue a damsel in distress, all you get is a distressed damsel." We are constantly bombarded with messages about how we're supposed to act, and shaming tactics are often employed when we don't comply. Ignore these tactics. They're intended to control you. The most common tactic is to question your manhood, as in, if you were a real man, then you'd insert desired behavior here. These attempts at manipulation are easy to spot when you're paying attention. And they don't work with MGTOW guys, which drives women nuts, especially when we actually laugh at them for trying. One situation where it can be challenging for men to keep things in perspective is when the woman in question is highly attractive. I think it's safe to say that beautiful women are better equipped for manipulating men than less attractive women are. They know this, which is why most women put so much effort into maximizing their visual impact. Hence the use of makeup, cosmetic surgery, and fashion to make the most of a female's appearance. Overweight chicks with big boobs hide their asses while trying to draw your attention to the boobs. Flat-chested skinny girls wear yoga pants to emphasize their asses. Older chicks use makeup, aka fake-up, to appear younger. Stockings are worn to hide cellulite. Surgery is endured to help a woman be more sexually appealing. Does anyone really believe that they are doing this for their own benefit? To feel better about themselves, as they often claim? No, they're doing it to attract men or to exert more control over men. Period. This is no different than a man pretending that he makes more money than he does or lying about what he does for a living in order to garner favor. Men are attracted to physical beauty, women are attracted to resources. In both cases, the individuals are misrepresenting themselves. The only difference is that the man will be called out as a liar, while the woman won't. In the case of women who really are attractive, they can get away with much more than other women, as long as guys are willing to put up with it, which most of them are. That situation isn't likely to change, but you probably don't want to play that game anyway. Unless you're Brad Pitt, handsome and rich, you'll be in a subordinate position in her mind. In fact, you'll probably be in a subordinate position regardless. This is because women tend to have a greatly inflated sense of self-worth. On the attractiveness scale, 5s think they're 8s, and 8s think they're 10s. It's so prevalent that this has become known as the 80-20 rule, where 80% of women believe they are deserving of the top 20% of men. They vastly overestimate their sexual market value. You can confirm this for yourself on any dating site. Just look up an unattractive, overweight woman of any age and read her list of demands. She'll be asking for a handsome, fit, tall, educated, successful guy with a great sense of humor who knows how to treat a woman. If you're on board with the red pill analogy, then you probably recognize the code in that message. Knows how to treat a woman means willing to spend lots of money on me. In fact, the spending money part is a deal breaker with virtually all women. They claim it's because they consider generosity to be a desirable character trait, like honesty, but they really just want your money. And where did this inflated sense of self-worth come from? I believe that it starts in childhood, where they are treated as princesses. After years of being referred to as daddy's little princess, they internalize the idea that they really are special. The problem is that they often fail to outgrow this. Boys, by contrast, come to grips with reality at a fairly young age. I'm really not a fucking cowboy. A young female may admit that she is not literally a princess, but will often still feel entitled to be treated like one. Then, when boys and young men start pursuing them, they take it to the next level. They mistake male lust for confirmation that they are special, and therefore entitled to special treatment. And guys go along with this. They're just trying to get laid, but every time they hit on a girl, her perceived value goes up. It's no wonder that we have women with out-of-control egos. They learn very quickly that by virtue of having a vagina, they have a distinct advantage over men, though they'll rarely admit to exploiting this. If they're pretty, they'll have guys lined up for a shot at being with them, yet will still cry about being disadvantaged as a woman. Red pill men see right through this. We're impervious to it, but mostly we just don't care. Our lives don't revolve around getting laid, even if that was once the case. We can appreciate a hot female physique and pretty face as much as the next guy, but we can also see the dark side. Blue pill men can't, and so are drawn in by the pretty stuff. As long as they're willing to make the sacrifices demanded by the keepers of the golden vagina, then things aren't going to change, at least not for them. It may help to think of it as similar to an addiction. You know you want it, but you also know it isn't good for you. Compare it to cocaine. Yeah, it'd be great to partake, but when you come down from the high, you're going to be much worse off. Better skip it. The problem is that while you can avoid being around cocaine, it's hard to avoid being around attractive women. Granted, that's becoming less of a problem with the land whale movement, but it still happens. In my experience, and from what I've seen in the manosphere, the frustration and craving tends to diminish over time. Once you realize that a chick in a short skirt is just a woman trying to use her only asset to manipulate you, it becomes almost humorous. Just say to yourself, yep, there goes another gold digger in denial about being a whore. Let her find some other chump. Shake it off and go about your day. Whether women like it or not, the modern world was created mostly by men, while women just take it all for granted. The lights come on when you flip the switch, there's roads to drive on, the grocery store is always full of food, there's buildings to live and work in, you can fly anywhere in a matter of hours, etc. Life is pretty good if you compare it to, say, the 19th century. None of these things just happened. They're the result of sharp minds and hard work. The payoff is the unprecedented level of safety, comfort, and convenience that we enjoy today. Keeping it all running smoothly is also the result of sharp minds and hard work. The electrical grid doesn't run itself, nor does the internet. Life in the 21st century requires massive infrastructure, which usually goes unnoticed until something goes wrong. But even then, it's usually just some minor inconvenience like a delayed flight or lost cell phone signal. We should acknowledge the fact that virtually all of this is due to the efforts of men. Sure, women give birth to men, which is obviously important, but for the most part, that's where their contribution ends. And yes, they've contributed other things, but not all that much if you do an honest appraisal. Who built the Hoover Dam and the Golden Gate Bridge? The railroads and interstate highways? The ships that transport goods in and out of our country? Who fixes the power lines in a storm, fights wildland fires, and works the oil rigs? Men, with only rare exceptions. Sure, you'll find the token female in male-dominated professions, but men perform most of the truly important work of keeping everything functioning. That's not to say that this is a problem, though. Men enjoy building things, fixing broken stuff, and solving difficult problems. We like adrenaline and physically challenging tasks. This kind of work suits us. It's just to acknowledge a fact. Men keep the world running smoothly. Yet, most women seem completely unaware of this and continue to regard us as useless imbeciles. You could argue, of course, that things aren't running smoothly. We have wars, poverty, and a lot of other problems. But at the same time, you have to admit that at least in the developed world, things are pretty good. It's hard to take someone seriously as they complain about world poverty when they own a nice house and a BMW, or fretting about alleged global warming from their private jet. This kind of hypocrisy isn't limited to women, but it's very common among them, and it often shows itself when they're discussing men. They'll sit in a house literally built and paid for by men, and with a straight face state to their girlfriends that men are useless and that they don't need us. The cognitive dissonance is staggering. You may notice as you gain knowledge that you start seeing validation of MGTOW ideas everywhere. For example, someone pointed out years ago that whenever there's a woman on a road crew, she'll be the one holding the sign while the men perform the real work. I just saw that again today, confirming that this is still the way it is. You'll probably notice it too the next time you pass a road crew. You'll laugh at Hollywood every time they try to advance the feminist agenda through female heroines. You'll spot the bias in the media, hear it in song lyrics, and see it on magazines in the checkout line. You'll be able to recognize propaganda instantly, which has the added benefit of rendering marketing ineffective against you. When people have been selling you a lie for most of your life, it becomes difficult for salespeople to sell you things that you don't need. I recently had to call my cell phone provider over a billing issue. Once that was resolved, the woman tried to sell me a new phone. I declined, but she kept pushing. She had a well-rehearsed counter for every objection I made. Finally, I told her, I said no, and if I wanted to be manipulated, then I would have stayed married. Had to hang up on her. While much of MGTOW philosophy is considered new, we can look back in history for examples of similar thinking long before the information age. A prime example is Briffault's law, because Dr. Briffault appears to have taken the red pill decades before it was even conceptualized. Some may disagree with his theory, but you can't say it isn't interesting. By the way, you spell that name Briffault. Dr. Robert Briffault, 1876 to 1948, was an English surgeon, anthropologist, and author. His ideas are highly relevant to MGTOW and so worth consideration here. Briffault's law states, quote, "The female, not the male, determines all the conditions of the animal family. Where the female can derive no benefit from association with the male, no such association takes place." End quote. In other words, women do not love men unconditionally. They will enter into relationships with men when such relationships are beneficial. This should come as no surprise, but I would add that the female must not only benefit, but benefit to a sufficient degree in her mind. All else being equal, who's she going to choose? The guy earning $40K or the guy earning $150K? Even if all else isn't equal and the guy with the bigger paycheck is kind of an asshole, she'll still choose him. This also partly explains why wealthy men often get away with being assholes. They still get women. There are 3 corollaries to Briffault's law, which we'll look at one at a time. Corollary 1. Quote, "Even though a woman has accrued past benefits from her relationship with a man, this is no guarantee of her continuing the relationship with him." End quote. This translates into, "What have you done for me lately?" This is a distinctly female question, by the way. It's very easy to imagine a female asking it, but not a male. It has always baffled me the way women in my life seem to forget all the good things that I did for them. You can buy them houses and cars, make career sacrifices, give them countless hours of your time, and it's all quickly forgotten. It doesn't usually work that way with men. For example, if you help a buddy out with some project, it's automatically accepted that he'll step up in the future should you need help with something. It's not so much that he owes you, it's just that this is the correct way to behave as a civilized human being. You don't hold it over the guy's head, but he'll remember that you did him a solid. It's just a basic spirit of cooperation, or doing the right thing. Women's minds simply don't work this way. Hence, you can work for years providing resources to a woman, but you're not actually making deposits into what Stephen Covey refers to as her emotional bank account. As far as she's concerned, you're simply doing what's expected and nothing more. Once your good deeds are in the past, they no longer matter. This explains why women are so often dissatisfied with life in general and with their men in particular. They have no gratitude. If you've been married for 20 years, whatever sacrifices you made in the first decade are completely irrelevant. Ironically, if you fucked anything up in the same time frame, those things will most definitely never be forgotten. This represents a lack of loyalty on the part of women and explains why they are capable of such cruelty during a divorce. They literally don't remember all of the things you did right. All they see is whatever perceived shortcomings you have. At the same time, men do remember the good things, which is what makes divorce more painful for men. They are often genuinely sad to be losing the woman they fell in love with, and perplexed to see her morph into a selfish, spiteful bitch, intent on harming him as much as she can. How is it that women are capable of transforming from unicorns into raging bitches from hell? Guys have been trying to figure that one out for a long time, but this theory provides a possible explanation. They don't have the same moral compass as men. Remembering your positive actions and attributes does not serve her purpose, so those things are dismissed. This may be a little hard to understand if you're a man, because our brains aren't wired that way. But you have to admit, it explains a lot. Corollary 2. Quote, if a woman promises a man to continue her relationship with him in the future in exchange for a benefit received from him today, her promise becomes null and void as soon as the benefit is rendered. End quote. By way of example, I interpret this to mean that a woman may pledge to be faithful to a man if he agrees to marry her, but once he does so, she is no longer obligated to be faithful, which may explain why women feel justified in cheating. They simply don't believe they owe it to him to be faithful because his end of the deal has already been met. It's history. I can hear it now. But men cheat too. Okay, screeching harpy, that's true, but for entirely different reasons. I would venture to guess that most men cheat out of sexual frustration because they aren't getting sex at home. This is actually the opposite of Corollary 2. To clarify, let's flip things around a bit. Suppose the benefit being rendered to the man is sex. Corollary 2 states that the promise, being faithful to her, becomes null and void once the benefit of sex is rendered. For the corollary to fit, it would require the woman to provide adequate sex and then for the man to cheat anyway. Those aren't usually the conditions when a man cheats on his wife, so the men cheat too argument isn't valid in this context. To clarify, when the wife cheats, it's because the man has provided her with the benefit, marriage. This is Briffault's law. When the husband cheats, it's because the wife hasn't provided him with the benefit, sex. Thus, this is not Briffault's law. Note that the cheating in both cases is the result of the woman's behavior. Of course, there are exceptions, but men with healthy sex lives at home are probably less likely to stray than men who are ignored sexually, often for years. Corollary 2 also explains why women feel no remorse when monkey branching. If you have fulfilled all of your obligations to her, including providing the material goods that she expected from the beginning, that doesn't compel her to stay with you. Everything that you provided just makes you even. She owes you nothing. So if a better guy comes along that she can latch onto, chances are better than average that she'll do it. You could also apply this to sex, in that women will provide lots of sex in the beginning of a relationship, implying that this will continue to be the norm as long as the man makes a commitment to her. As virtually all married men know, once that commitment is made, she will no longer feel obligated to continue providing sex with the same frequency. The promise of sex, to you, is rendered null and void because the benefit, to her, of marrying her has already been rendered. The issue seems to be that women fail to grasp a concept that most men readily understand: honor. They simply don't have any, and so hypergamy reigns. The very word honor immediately conjures up images of men. Think of a woman who exemplifies honor. Go ahead, I'll wait. Fictional women don't count. Not easy, is it? Corollary 3. Quote, a man's promise of a future benefit has limited ability to secure a continuing relationship with a woman, and his promise carries weight with her only to the extent that the woman's wait for the benefit is short and to the extent that she trusts him to keep his promise. End quote. An example that comes to mind is from the old movie An Officer and a Gentleman. In this film, two girlfriends are trying to land naval aviators as they go through their initial training. Pun unintended. The idea is that the men will go on to become successful officers and so provide many benefits to the women. Spoiler alert, one of the women was desperately trying to get a proposal out of her victim and even tried unsuccessfully to sperm jack him. The guy dropped from the training for some kind of medical reason. He then finally proposed to her, explaining that he has a solid plan. They can move back to his hometown where he has secured some kind of retail management job. She declines his proposal because that isn't what she signed up for. The guy is crushed because he thought she loved him. Turns out he was just the utility that she was counting on to provide the lifestyle she wanted. The bitch didn't even hesitate or think about it. She immediately dumped him. The former officer candidate ultimately committed suicide. This is an important thing for the young guys to understand. If you're in a relationship with a woman and your career trajectory looks promising, don't expect her to stick around if you change your plans. If you change majors from business to music, your potential income just dropped, and she's probably going to go find another business major. That said, if you end up becoming a rock star down the road, then she'll probably be looking you up. Some of this may be controversial, but it seems to me that Briffault was onto something. Analyzing female behavior is always difficult, to say the least, but Briffault's law gives us one possible explanation for why women behave the way they do. Just consider it another tool for your MGTOW toolbox. Or reject it, your choice. At any rate, it's probably best to embrace reality, even if it kind of sucks at first. Regardless how much tragedy, drama, and heartache you've endured at the hands of women, you can go forth confident in the knowledge that it'll never happen again. There are thousands of examples of this on the web, and if you've been MGTOW for a while, then you already know this. If not, then I'd recommend doing your research. Then, hopefully, you'll become one more MGTOW success story. Choose the red pill. And that's the end of Chapter 3, Accepting Reality. Thank you for listening, gentlemen, and have a great day.